Now, one way we could do this is simply go after each name, or go after the name and put some spaces, right? And then put some spaces after the town. And we could just do that in Maine. We could just say, oh, put names and then put some spaces. But what we want this report to do is we want everything to line up nicely in columns. And so to do that, we need to put the right number of spaces. And the spaces will change based on how long the name is and then how long the town is. For example, when we have Walter here, we might need 12 spaces. But if we go look at the names that we have, they're all different lengths. So when we print out Sam, instead of 12, we're going to need 16 because Sam's smaller, so we need more spaces to get the town to line up. And then when we're working with the towns, again, we have this problem of some are longer and some are shorter. And so we don't know how many spaces to do it. So what we want to do is we want to be able to say, well, I take up this much space and put it in there, and then whatever spaces are left over, it needs to be the right number of spaces. And we're not going to be able to count these, so we need a way to do this automatically. Well, it turns out there is a way, and to do that, we're going to need to pound include a new header file, and that is the header file iomanip. And that's for input-output manipulation. And this works when we're doing output or input from any stream. So we can actually format the output when we're using cout, or we can format the output when we're using any one of these files. So this is a really handy header file. And let's go down and see what we want to do. So down here, back in our printout statement, what we're going to do is we're going to use one of the commands, one of the functions that's available in this iomanip. And it is called setw. And that stands for set width. It's not showing up. How come is it not showing up? Oh, I need to put the insertion operator in front of it. And then I can put a set width function. Notice that I'm putting this function right inside, like I'm printing it out, right? But I'm not going to be printing anything out here. I'm going to be setting a column width. So let's say that we want the names to be in a field that's 18 big. So what set width does is it creates a field, and then the next thing you print out will be printed inside that field. So set width, we just made a field that's 18 big, and then we'll put the name in there. So when it's Walter, it'll put Walter in there, and then whatever is left over will be filled up with spaces. Now you can choose to fill it up with something else. That's another setting that you can use. But by default, it fills any remaining parts of the field with spaces. And that's really what we want. So we can set a width for names. We can set a width for towns. We can set a width for minutes. Now minutes aren't going to be as big, so let's make them only 10. And then we want notice that for each time we want a space, you have to set a field. It just sets one field, and then it puts the very next thing in it. So for each time you want to put a value in a field, you need to define the field. And the way you create the field is with set width. And so look at that. I created a field for each value. So let's run that and see what happens. All right, and we open that up and we look at it. And now what we've got is we've got them all lined up. So here's that field that is 18 big, and it put the name Walter in it. Here's that field that's 18 big, and it put Bountiful in it. Here's that, here's that field that's 10. Here's that field that is 10 big, and it put the 22 in it. So this gave us the fields. These make things line up. Now, what did we notice? Here we have Walter in this field. It's lining up on the right-hand side. This is called right justified, and that's the default. It creates the field, and then it prints the value in there, and that value is lined up on the right side, so it's right justified. That's default. It's a setting we can do. So let's say, oh, we really want to have the name lined up on the left. So the way that we do that is we go back in here and we say, oh, set it up for left. Now this one is different. Remember that with set width, we had to create individual fields. Every time we wanted to use it, we had to create one. Left, on the other hand, is like it's a setting that we just set and it stays the same until we change it. So if we say left, it's going to left justify everything until we say otherwise. So let's go ahead and left justify everything, right? Names, towns, commute minutes, all of them will be left justified. So there they are. Now we have this field that's 18 big and Walter was written in there and it's left justified. We have this field bountiful, it's left justified. We have this field for the minutes, it's left justified. We set that to left and it stayed left. All right, now let's talk about this a little bit. It looks like we're just using first names here, so that looks a little bit big for this. So let's go ahead and change how big we want that. And let's just, instead of making it 18, let's make it 12. And let's make this 16. Let's go ahead and leave the 10s. Those seem to be about right to spread things out and make it organized. And let's see what our report looks like now. All right, there we have Walter, bountiful, minutes, miles, and average. Now notice that we can line up our headings too. So to do this, remember we just did heading as one long line. So we can go up here and we can say, oh, instead of doing that, let's go ahead and line these up the same way that we did, right? And that we'll just make them individual values and then we'll create a field for them. And that way, instead of having to count spaces, even for the heading, we can just line them, we can make them the same width as the other things that we've used. So here, I'm just putting each individual heading in a quote and saying, let's just make them themselves. And then let's use the same set size fields, okay? And we are gonna want these, let's go ahead and line them up. We'll set it to left up there. And then there. Oops. I want to copy that. Notice I'm just having to copy each one up there, and you can do this too, right? Just copy each one and paste it up there. And then let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Okay, there we go. Notice how we created the same fields. So now everything is lining up really nicely.